Hey everyone, Diptesh here, back again with another video. In this one, I'm going to test a feature known as bypass charging on the OnePlus 15 and the iQOO 15. But before beginning this video, please do the needful. Consider hitting that like and subscribe button and hype this video so that I get more reach. Okay, so what is bypass charging? So the SoC and all other components on your phone is powered by the battery. So depending on the load of the task the SoC is running, it requests power which the battery provides. Now on phones, the performance level is controlled by the temperatures on the battery. So if the battery is having to supply a lot of power like you see during high-end emulation, these flagship chips can utilize upwards of 10 watts. The battery gets hot pretty fast, and with the rising temperatures, the performance starts to throttle. Now, with bypass charging, the theory is that the power adapter will directly supply the power to the components, bypassing the battery, and thereby battery temperature should be lower, increasing the sustained performance. But is that actually happening in real life? Let's find that out. We will test it on the OnePlus 15 and the iQOO 15. On the OnePlus 15, I have set 40% as a limit, which means if you have more than 40% battery, then bypass charging will directly power the SoC. And on the iQOO, you just have to enable bypass charging. So let's start with the OnePlus. I tested 3 games on the OnePlus and we are starting with Wuthering Waves. Now pay attention to the starting temperatures. We started with a 1 degree centigrade higher temperature on the bypass charging setup. So keep that in mind. Ideally, I should have timed it better, but just keep that difference in mind. What you will notice is that at no point of the gameplay does the battery temperature of the bypass charging setup gets cooler than the battery temperature on the non-bypass charging setup. Maybe you can say at max the bypass charging setup was 1 degree to a half a degree cooler because it started with 1 degree centigrade higher temperatures, but this difference is too less to make a judgment. The real benefit of bypass charging here is that we did not lose even 1% of the battery. Why? Because bypass charging actually still charges the battery, but at a very slow rate just to maintain the battery charge level. You can see we actually gained a percentage which is margin of error. So in a game like Wuthering Waves, we basically maintained the same performance but we didn't lose any battery. That is the current benefit of bypass charging. But let's check a couple of more demanding games. So my theory here is maybe we didn't see much difference in Wuthering Waves when it comes to temperatures is because power draw is fairly low compared to what I'm going to test next. So in theory, if I test something which draws like 8 to 10 watts from the battery, then bypass charging will show a real difference. So let's test Grid Legends in graphics priority mode with modified 50 FPS cap and no dynamic resolution. Here I noticed something which I never expected. As we start the race, both devices are maintaining a rock solid 50 FPS. But around the 4-minute mark, the bypass charging setup starts to drop some frames, and that puzzled me as the temperatures are clearly completely under control. This becomes more clear as the game progresses. After the third lap, the bypass charging setup starts to drop more and more frames, even though temperatures are almost identical to the non-bypass charging setup. Going into the fifth lap is when I realized what's going on. See, the power draw on the non-bypass charging setup, it's pushing like 9 to 10 watt. And I think on bypass charging setup, it's not able to push that kind of power directly into the SoC. I think with bypass charging setup, the power limit is lower. and this will become absolutely clear with my final test. So with Grid Legends, performance is clearly better with non-bypass charging setup. With bypass charging, we did not drop battery temperatures and the performance was worse. Yes, with bypass charging, we didn't lose a single battery percentage, whereas we lost 5% battery without bypass charging. Finally, to prove my theory of lower power limits with bypass charging, I tested GTA 5 emulation. High to very high graphics mix DX11 720p. And here you can see a clear difference. Without bypass charging, the OnePlus 15 is maintaining an amazing rock solid 60 FPS. Fantastic performance. This is possible because the battery is supplying like 10 to 11 watts of power. Meanwhile, with bypass charging enabled, the performance is clearly capped from the beginning. Based on my experience with this game, the power limit is capped to like 7 watts or so. This is why performance is not really exceeding 50 FPS, where we are logged to 60 FPS with a lot more in the tank in the non-bypass charging setup. And this is also proven by the battery temperatures. With bypass charging enabled, finally we are seeing a substantially lower battery temperatures. It's because the power limit itself is much lower. Looking at the final performance, you can see that the bypass charging setup yielded much lower temperatures, but at the cost of much lower performance as well. There is no free lunch basically. There is clearly a hard power limit once bypass charging is enabled. I reckon that power limit is just around 7 watts based on my FPS experience. Again, we don't lose a single battery percentage with bypass charging, but we lost 6% battery without it. Now let's take a look how the iQOO 15 behaves. I tested Grid Legends and GTA 5. Starting with Grid Legends, I can't say that one is better than the other. You can see iQOO is already more power limited than OnePlus, and in this case of iQOO, the difference between bypass charging enabled or disabled isn't making much of a difference. At the end in Grid Legends, both are within margin of error. No difference in temperatures as well. Maybe the bypass charging setup was just a bit more stable at the beginning. We did not lose any battery with bypass charging. Meanwhile, we lost 6% battery with it disabled. Next up in GTA 5, the difference again is tiny. The iQOO 15 is already power limited, and so the difference in actual performance is not that much different. At the end, there is a slight difference in average FPS, but that can happen as the gameplay is not identical. It's not 100% the same. No difference in temperatures as well. We lost 2% battery without bypass charging, and we did not lose any battery with it enabled. So what's the conclusion? If you thought that with bypass charging enabled, your OnePlus 15 will just become a gaming laptop, then you will be disappointed. There is a clear drop in performance due to lower power limit. The only benefit is in games where you are within the sustainable power limit of bypass charging, like in games such as BGMI, Genshin Impact, and even Wuthering Waves. So in such games which is within the power limit of bypass charging, you get both full performance and also don't lose any battery. Same is applicable on the iQOO 15. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit like, share and subscribe, and also consider hyping this video. Take care and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.